When I was 10, my family moved into an old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. My dad had just started a new job, and the house seemed straight out of a ghost story. Tall, narrow, with peeling paint and ivy crawling up the sides. It was a cool place for a kid, with lots of space to explore. But at night, the atmosphere changed. The house seemed to breathe, groaning with age. It all began with footsteps in the attic just after midnight. At first, I thought it was the house settling or maybe an animal, but the sound was too distinct, rhythmic and deliberate. I mentioned it to my dad, but he dismissed it as the old pipes or wind. My mom, ever the rationalist, suggested it was just our imagination. One night, unable to stand the curiosity any longer, I decided to investigate. My parents were downstairs watching TV, and my sister, Emma, was asleep. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen and climbed the steep, creaky attic stairs. The air grew colder and mustier with each step. When I reached the top, I shone the flashlight around. The attic was filled with old boxes and dust, but an unsettling feeling lingered. Then I heard it, the soft, almost imperceptible sound of breathing. The flashlight flickered, and in that brief moment of dim light, I saw it. A figure crouched in the corner. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, and its limbs were unnaturally long and twisted. I was paralyzed with fear as it began to crawl toward me, dragging its body across the floor with nails scraping the wood. I wanted to scream, but could only back away. I fled down the stairs, slamming and locking my bedroom door behind me. The next morning, I told my parents everything, but they dismissed it as a nightmare. My dad checked the attic and found nothing, just old junk left by the previous owners. He told me it was probably just my imagination, heightened by our move and the new environment. But I knew what I had seen. For the rest of the time we lived in that house, I avoided the attic. Yet the noises continued, soft shuffling, scraping nails, and that eerie breathing. My grades started slipping because I was barely sleeping, and my friends at school noticed I was always tired. I didn't tell them what was happening. I didn't want to be labeled as crazy. Nana started hearing the noises too. She was too scared to mention it until one night when the footsteps woke her. She came running into my room, crying, and said she heard someone walking around in the attic. I reassured her, saying it was just the house settling. But deep down, we both knew it was more than that. After that night, she began sleeping in my room, unable to bear being alone. We tried to tell our parents again, but they just told us to stop being silly. My dad even checked the roof, thinking a branch might be scraping against it, but found nothing. He was frustrated, thinking we were making it all up, but we weren't. One night, the noises grew worse. The footsteps were louder and more frantic, like whatever was up there was furious. Emma and I huddled together in my bed, too scared to move, as the footsteps turned into thumping and banging, as if something was throwing itself against the attic walls. Then, abruptly, it all stopped. The silence was oppressive. We didn't dare move or speak, afraid that whatever was up there might hear us. After what felt like hours, we finally fell asleep, exhausted from fear. The next morning, the attic was quiet, and the noises didn't return for several nights. We thought maybe it was over, that whatever it was had finally left. But we were wrong. A few days later, I was home alone after school, working on my homework at the kitchen table. My parents were at work, and Emma was at a friend's house. It was late afternoon, the sun setting and casting long shadows across the floor. I was concentrating on a math problem when I heard it again, the soft, shuffling footsteps. But this time, they were coming from inside the house, not the attic. My heart skipped a beat. The noise was coming from the hallway just outside the kitchen. I grabbed the flashlight and cautiously moved toward the hallway, the sound of my own breathing loud in my ears. As I stepped into the hallway, the footsteps ceased. I shone the flashlight down the dark corridor, but there was nothing, just empty space. Then I felt it, the same cold, sour smell I'd noticed in the attic. The air grew heavy and oppressive. I could feel something behind me, something cold and hungry. I turned slowly, raising the flashlight. The beam flickered, and in that instant, I saw it. The same figure from the attic, standing at the end of the hallway, its eyes glowing in the darkness. It moved closer, its limbs jerking unnaturally. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs felt like lead. I backed away, my heart pounding, until I bumped into the kitchen counter. The figure continued to approach, its breathing raspy and wet. Finally, the flashlight flickered out, plunging the hallway into darkness. The figure was right in front of me, and then, in the pitch-black silence, it whispered my name. Just one distorted, underwater-like word. Michael. I somehow found the strength to push past it and ran out of the house, not stopping until I was halfway down the driveway. I stayed outside until my parents came home, too scared to go back inside. When I finally did, the house was eerily quiet, as if it were waiting for something. After that night, I refused to stay alone in the house, and Emma and I made a pact never to talk about what happened. We didn't want to give it power or acknowledge its reality, but we both knew it was real. We could feel it, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting. We moved out of that house when I was 13, and I've never been back. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I still hear those footsteps and wonder if it ever really left. I can never forget those eyes and that whispering voice. I don't know what it wanted, but I'm glad I never found out.